Good evening. So, tonight, I want to know how many dowsers are out there in the room? How many people are already dowsing? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right. How many have heard of dowsing but never tried it? Most everybody else. So for those of you who already are dowsers, you'll be a better dowser by the time we finish tonight. And hopefully, those folks that have not tried it yet will get a chance to try it at the end. I've got a number of different dowsing instruments over here. I'll explain how they work and how dowsing works in general. Those folks that already do it, they kind of get it. They know what's going on. But for the rest of you, we'll do a little explanation. So when did all this start? Long time ago. So there's a cave in the Atlas Mountains of North Africa that shows a dowser, probably locating game, not water, but it definitely shows them with a fork stick. And this goes back like 8,000 years. This is way before, well, probably right at the dawn of agriculture. But it goes way back. Since then, dowsing has progressed in many different directions. It is both a biophysical response where we walk through an anomaly. And I have located on the floor back here with some orange flagging tape where a water flow is. When we walk through a zone like that, above a water flow, there's a change in the energy. Not a magnetic change, but it is a change in the energy. We can be sensitized to that if we program ourselves to be sensitive to that. Then when we walk through that zone, we get a reaction. If we program that reaction into our dowsing rods, it may take a few tries, it might take a while before we build up this sensitivity, but then we'll get a reaction. And every time after that, we'll get a reaction when we walk over something similar. So we can program by using questions. We question whatever we want to think about. We can imagine this as questioning ourselves, questioning our higher self, questioning our subconscious, questioning those that know, however we want to describe that. It puts it outside of ourselves. It takes our ego out of the equation. The old timers used to wet their hands and maybe wet the stick and get a fork stick off of a peach or a willow. And then they'd just go for it. They'd let the stick take them to where the water was. Just be guided, right? As far as they were concerned, they didn't do anything. They were out of the picture. They were just holding a stick. But that literally collapsed the ego and just let them be an innocent bystander of what was going on. That's part of the key. That's part of it. That even though we know what's happening now, we know we're the one that's structuring the question, we know we're the one that's holding the dowsing rod, and we know it's a subconscious muscle reaction that's making the dowsing rod go down. We have to take ourselves out of that loop. And part of the equation that I use for dowsing, we can form a little mnemonic. Vern Cameron, who was a preeminent dowser back in the 50s and 60s. Concentric circles indicate thermal springs. This was a generalization that he used to find hot wells in Southern California. And he would find a system like this where water was coming up through a volcanic fissure, and then it would cap out. There would be an underground layer of rock, but some of it would find its way up and work its way up to the surface. from the top, it looks like that. 2 concentric rings. The Spanish have a name for that. They call it the ojo caliente, the hot eye, right? And that's how they dowsed it. That's what it looked like. Well, concentric circles indicate thermal springs was just a convenient mnemonic. We need to be clear about what we're dowsing for. We need to be centered in ourselves, secure, undistracted. We need to be innocent. No preconceived notions about where things are going to be. Oh, I know the water it's probably going down. No, you can't go there. It could be anywhere, and you have to be innocent about it. Be thorough. Oh boy, this one gets me. And I've learned to be more thorough over the years. Be more thorough than you think you need to be. When you think you're done, you're not. Do some more. Keep working on it. And if you're working in a given area and somebody says, yeah, there's probably water in this given area, work in a bigger area. If you're on a map, work in a bigger map. You know, don't limit yourself. Concentric circles indicate thermal springs. Be thorough and be specific in your questions. The subconscious is almost like a little kid. It's very literal. Imagine giving instructions to a teenager. He's going to do what you say, not necessarily what you want. So the subconscious can react like that. Not always, but it can. And when your question is vague, it's like programming a computer, garbage in, garbage out. We want to be very specific, very clear. So be clear, be centered, be innocent, be thorough, and be specific. I have a handout up here that has that on it, so you don't have to memorize it, but you will. So, the dowsing process. The dowsing process starts with a question. Where is the water? How do I do something? Maybe we've got a health problem. We're trying to solve this health problem. Any number of different situations can be dowsing can be utilized as a way to find that information. So here's one example, but it's not the only one. So you have a dowsing rod in your hands, palms up, out through the little finger and the thumb, squeezing inward until it goes unstable. It wants to shake and then flip one way or the other. It's not stable at all. That's where you want it, right there, right at that unstable position where it's almost shaking. Then any slight movement of your wrist will pop it down or pop it up. That's where you want it. You want it in that balance point, almost like a light switch, where you find that balance point right between the flip up and the flip down. And you can just hold it right there. You barely touch it and it'll flip.
Does it matter if it flips forward or backwards?
It doesn't matter. So in Europe, they start up here. They put the arms out straight, they lock them, and then they walk forward. I'm looking for an underground fault or fracture. Underground fault or fracture, right there. All right. Same thing, but with the dowsing rod forward now. Unstable, pushing inward, looking for an underground fault or fracture. Underground fault or fracture, right there. So I moved it, but I didn't think I moved it. It was totally subconscious, and that's how it feels. It feels like, oh, I didn't do this. So I know some people have.
This is plastic, isn't it?
Excuse me?
Is it plastic?
That little rod, yes. It's actually fiberglass. It's made from the bristles of a street cleaner.
Does it matter if you use that for looking for pipes or water or
No,
gold or anything? You can use anything as long as it's the question.
it is in you. You are the instrument. This, you are the receiver, okay? You're the receiver. This is the meter that is telling the person listening to the receiver, oh, there's a signal. Look, okay. It's just popping, it's just popping you in the head saying, wake up, dummy, pay attention, there's something going on here. All right, so every time, and you won't know. I mean, if you just walk around, you're going to get reactions to all kinds of stuff. You have to structure the question and center yourself. Stay innocent. Be thorough in your questioning. And then you'll get some decent answers. But it is simple. I mean, it's just simple, right? You get a response, and wow, there's the answer. Well, it depends. It's pretty complex in the questioning. Be clear, be centered, be innocent, be thorough, and be specific. So if you can hold all of that at once, you're a good dowser. But doing that, it's harder than you think. So, what can get in the way? Well, anything that can interfere with those things can get in the way. Plus fatigue. If we're, getting back into jogging, and we haven't done much all winter, getting back into shape again will feel uncomfortable. In fact, after we've run a mile, we might feel shaky, and our legs will feel weak. A very similar system, very similar set of circumstances may happen in dowsing. When I first started dowsing, when I first started dowsing was in Fort Collins, Colorado. I was a young man, and I'd seen in the Whole Earth catalog, I'm dating myself, an introduction to an ancient practice, which is what I've called this tonight. That was a little booklet by Gordon McLean, the then president of the American Society of Dowsers. And it was a basic instruction booklet on what you need to do, just what we're going to do tonight. And I went out, I was renting the basement of a house as an apartment. And I went out in the front lawn, and I had a pair of bell rods like this. And I asked for where the water line was coming into the house. I wanted to find the water line. I was picturing a water line, like a 1-inch pipe carrying water. And I walked along, and I got a response. In fact, I had two, and they separated on me. Doesn't matter. They can cross too. It doesn't matter. Whoa, that was weird. But the wind was, blowing towards me, and then, maybe it was the wind. So I turned around and I walked backwards over that same zone. They opened up against the wind, and I knew maybe I actually had something. So I checked with the landlord. Hey, where's your water line? Oh, it's right there. So I had it. So I asked if I could go out back, and he had an irrigation well that he just used to water the lawn with. You know how deep it is? Yeah, I know how deep it is. I'm going to douse how deep it is. And you tell me if I'm right. So I did. I started right over the top of the well, imagining myself going down in depth, 1 foot at a time. 1 foot, 2 foot, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It wasn't very deep. To the top of the water, it was only like 10 feet or so. And I came back, and yeah, that was it. And I started dowsing from there. I located the well that Chris's dad had given up on. They had taken a test well, put down a test well behind where they built their house. They didn't get enough water, so they just covered it over and they put a driveway over it, dirt driveway. I didn't know any of this, and I was visiting, this is before we were married, right? So this weird guy, you know, is dating his daughter, and he thinks he can find water, right? So my father-in-law says, well, I've got this well that didn't work out. You know, I buried it over the driveway. Go find it. So I went back and forth, and I located where I thought the well was, and I marked it on the ground. I said, I think it's here, Dana. Okay. He had a backhoe. No problem. Let me see if it's there. Wong. First swipe took the cap right off the well. Okay, smarty pants. How deep is it? I'd never done that before, except at the residence where we had, right? So I'm standing over the well, going down in depth, 10 feet, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, and I get a response. Well, I'm a pretty new guy at this, and I said, I think it's around 60 feet. So being the science guy, he was an engineer for IBM, he takes some string, right, puts a weight on it, drops it down the well. You could hear it splash down there. Pulls it back out, measures it, 60 feet.
Wow, he was impressed.
I was off and running.
Right.
So it took me probably, I still wasn't very confident. And I did a lot of what we call proving up. Okay, that meant I find something and prove it. Sprinklers in a public park. They're all connected by sprinkler lines, right? So I douse the sprinkler line. Yeah, okay. Try it again. Yeah, okay. I got a sprinkler line there. Yeah, okay. Keep following it, back and forth, back and forth. Oh, look, there's a sprinkler head. Okay, let's go again. Oh, there's another sprinkler head. Wow, it just proved up, right? So I kept doing that. Air pressure in a tire, okay? Douse the air pressure, get your gauge out. Oh, I was right. So I wasn't right all the time. Depending on the topic I was dowsing, sometimes I was wrong a lot.
How did you do air pressure?
Again,
How did you do air pressure?
how did I do air pressure?
Yeah.
How much air pressure is in this tire now? At least 1 pound? At least 5 pounds of air? At least 10 pounds of air? At least 20 pounds of air? At least 5 pounds of air? 10 pounds of air? 15 pounds of air? 16, 17, 16. I only get 16 pounds of air. Let's check it. 16 pounds of air. So you can question using a series going up higher and higher. Or you could narrow it down. You could say, is it within these limits? Is the tire pressure between 20 and 40 pounds? Yes. Between 25 and 35 pounds? Yes. Okay. Until you get a no. So the start of dowsing should be you have a definite yes and you have a definite no.
So it's like a pendulum in a way, right?
Yeah. So if you have a pendulum, you have a swing, a yes or a no, or a yes and a no, however you want to do it. Whatever your program is, whatever you're comfortable with. On me, this is my yes. That's my positive. Going the reverse is a no. So
It's just the opposite for me, though.
yeah, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Your own
Doesn't matter.
program.
Or your polarity seems to influence it, or, you know, so, yeah.
So again, the dowsing rod doesn't matter. It's just an indicator that tells you something is going on. I like this design because it's very sensitive. It puts a lot of weight out away from your hand, and any slight movement of your hand moves it, but it's still pretty stable.
Just like a welding rod?
Yeah, yeah. It's 1/8 inch brass welding rod and a big pen. Just pop the center out of that, and you got it going. I've got several others up here too. We'll talk about those later and grab a handout on the way out. I have these for sale. I made a whole bunch of these at once. These are just the fiberglass bristles from a street cleaner brush. And you heat them up on the end, bend them over and put a collar on it. You know, $5 if you want one. But that's later.
Do you have to have your own, or you can borrow somebody else?
Doesn't matter. If you think you have to have your own,
You do.
that's all it'll work. And we call those shibboleths. It's an old Irish term. It means believing in something without any basis in fact. And there's a lot of those in dowsing. You can't douse in the rain. If your shoes are wet, you can't douse. You know, there's all of this, but none of it's really any. You know, there is some truth to the fact that if you've been dowsing for more than an hour consistently, and you're new at it, you're probably going to get some pretty squirrely answers after that first hour. You just get fatigued. You'll feel like you've run a mile. You'll feel like your heart is racing. You'll feel shaky. At least I did. And my hands were shaking. Now they shake all the time. But it's just be aware that you can develop fatigue, and that will influence your dowsing.
Quick question, is it better to be barefoot or it doesn't matter?
I don't think it matters. So again, there's the biophysical side where you're walking through an anomaly. Right here we've got a fault. Right there is a fault. Goes right up through here. There's another one that runs the other way. So that anomaly triggers the dowsing response. But there's something up here, an intuitive, that says you can take the dowsing rod, turn it this way. Now you've got a rudder. Now you've got a wind vane, basically, that you can get direction to, okay? So I'm looking for where two faults cross. I'm looking for two faults cross. And it lags. It wants to pull behind me. And I can keep walking out and keep turning like that and keep walking and find where that cross of the two flows are. Right there, where you're sitting. Okay? We'll talk about that. It's okay. So that was the intuitive side. That had nothing to do with the biophysical because I'm not there over the zone. This is how I locate water wells. When I'm out in the field, if I've got 40 acres to do, part of it on a hillside, I don't want to walk every inch of that 40 acres. It would take me all day. So I start asking for what I want. Well, what does the client want? Maybe the client has a house that he wants to put up, and he's got a couple of horses. He's got to water a couple of horses. Now his water needs are greater than somebody with a couple of kids. So I need to look for maybe at least 10 gallons a minute. 5 gallons a minute would satisfy HUD or your local lender, but it's not going to satisfy two horses. Okay, so I'm looking for an underground flow of water that's flowing at least, or a source where two flows intersect that has at least 10 gallons a minute. Where can I find an underground flow of water flowing at least 10 gallons a minute? And when I get a dip, and I go back again and get another dip, then I can turn the dowsing rods and just follow that out until they turn around on me and I got it. Do I trust that? No. I wouldn't be thorough if I just trusted that. So I'm going to back up from there and find those individual flows. Mark where they cross. Find how much water is in each one of those flows. Find out the depth of those flows. How far down do I have to go before I hit both of them and get that flow? So all of that I'll write up, put in a report. I'll GPS that location, stake it, and then the owner is free to douse it, or free to drill it whenever they want. I worked for a well driller. This was an interesting deal. I actually did it for free, just to get the experience. I did that for about 6 months, and I acted as his driller's helper to drill water wells. And this was in northern Arizona, around Flagstaff. If you've ever been in that area, it's recent volcanics. You've got the San Francisco peaks behind you that are a big volcanic cone volcanic cone. Most of the area around that is cinder. You've got layers of clay and cinder, clay and cinder, clay and cinder. And on top of those clay layers, sometimes you have a flow of water. It's totally unpredictable. There's no way a driller can look out on a field around Flagstaff and say, hey, I'm going to find water right there. No, not possible. So I would douse just for the heck of it. You know, this driller, he was behind in his payments to the IRS, and he needed footage. Drillers get paid by the foot, not by the gallon of water they produce. They get paid by the foot. So the more he drilled, the better. Okay, he was the guy that I was working with, so, all right, do your thing. So we drill, didn't get any water. Hey, my driller's helper here says he can find water. Maybe you ought to see what he can do. So I would do that, and we'd move over maybe 50 feet, maybe 100 feet, and we wouldn't drill as far as we just drilled to get nothing. And we could hear the water coming into the bottom of the well.
Wow.
And yeah, the owner was happy. Yeah, it costed him a little more to get the 2 wells drilled, but he was happy because he finally got water. And it was, I did that over and over. There were times when I missed. Sometimes a clay layer will be saturated, and that saturation will mimic water. And I got fooled. About 80% though, I hit. And after that, I dowsed in Texas, and it was pretty reliable. What else? Anxiety, thoughts of others, thoughts of yourself. We try to take the ego out of the situation. We don't want anxiety or our own expectations or our own anxiety of failure or success to interfere with the dowsing. We want to be completely innocent and centered. That can be difficult. I have to admit, sometimes in my dowsing, the client was really laying it all out in line. They weren't, you know, putting up a new house. They lived in an old place, and they were just barely squeaking by, and they put everything they had into this well project. And I began to pick up on that, and that anxiety. I gotta be right, you know, this has to come in. I gotta get him water. That splits the awareness. I mean, if you're doing that in the middle of your dowsing, your awareness is shattered. So it's really difficult then to remain innocent and focused. So yeah, I've had my failures. I've also had failures because I was dowsing really outside my comfort zone. Doing dowsing that I wasn't practiced at, and I didn't have a background in. Medical dowsing. Chris does much better medical dowsing than myself. She's a nurse. You know, she's had the physiology and anatomy, and she can ask a question better than I can about the human body. So I can kind of douse a vitamin need and little stuff like that, but I don't do big stuff. She douses the aura much better than I do. So in each person's expertise, whatever their background is, whatever their occupation had been, that can be an avenue to douse, because now they have the question. They can form a good question. They can make it succinct. I just don't have the vocabulary to douse accurately for the human body. I studied enough geology that I can douse the underground, and I can grok that. But we want to douse in the area of our expertise. The thoughts of others can also influence our dowsing. I've been in a dowsing group in California. We had a club going, and there was one guy there who was an old guy. He had a lot of experience, pretty opinionated old guy. And when he was in the room and we were asking a challenge question, a challenge dowsing, so we had something in a box maybe, and we knew the general parameters of what the object was, but we didn't know what it was. We had to douse what it was. Well, he would douse, and we would all get the same answer that he got. Damn! I mean, we're all sitting around the same table, and even if he was wrong, we got the same answer he did. So we want to be aware that there are people out there that are strong transmitters and can influence your dowsing. So when I'm dowsing for a client, I'll go out and I'll ask, let's go around the perimeter. You show me this property. Tell me about the property. Tell me what you've done to it, what your needs are. Fill me in on what's going on here. And then after that, I'm going to insist I douse alone. You can watch. You can be over there in your cars, you know, sit under a tree and watch what I'm doing, and then that's fine. And I'm going to come back on another day and check my first dowsing. And I'm totally by myself then. If everything jives, you know, the first dowsing, the second dowsing, my map dowsing at home, and everything comes together, I got it. I'm pretty satisfied then. I've been thorough, but I've also hit on a one-shot deal, but I don't like doing that. I've failed on a one-shot deal too. So, questions?
So how do you deal with failure in your mind?
I get a stiff upper lip.
What was the question?
How do I deal with failure? Yeah, that's hard to deal with. But hopefully one has built up enough success already that, and you want to learn from that failure. I mean, that's how we learn, right? We learn by doing, and we learn by stumbling and getting up and doing it again. When I first started dowsing here in Oregon, we had moved from Arizona. Let's see, I moved from Arizona, moved from Arizona to Southern Oregon here. I had started teaching here, 1977, 78, 1978. Just finished grad school in Arizona. Came back up here, And I thought, okay, this is a great place to practice my dowsing. And there was a local dowsing chapter out of Jacksonville. And had some very sensitive folks over there. It was good camaraderie. So I went into business. I said, okay, I'll guarantee the dowsing. You don't get water, you don't pay. That was the only, I didn't have a track record. That was the only way I could do it. So I've forgotten where it was. I think it was in Central Point. I doused a place outside of town. And their well had gone dry. And I was trying to locate another well. And I was dowsing depth to the well. And I wasn't thorough in the process I was using to determine depth. I just did a quick, from the top down, where's the water? 10 feet, 20 feet, 30 feet, 40 feet, 50 feet. And what I should have, well, it was that, and it was also the rate of flow. So rate of flow can be tricky. What comes out of a garden hose is about 5 gallons a minute. Yeah, pretty much full on. So I have that in my mind. But I wasn't careful about how I did that. I just doused 1 gallon a minute, 2 gallons a minute, 3 gallons a minute, 4 gallons a minute, 5 gallons a minute, and I got a response. I forget where it was. So I told them, okay, you're gonna go down X number of feet and get about 5 gallons a minute. Well, they went down and they did get some water, but it wasn't enough. It's 5 gallons an hour.
Oops.
So the subconscious triggered on the number, but it was the wrong value. So now I start at the lowest value I can think, like, is this a gallon a day? At least 2 gallons a day. And I go up to 24 gallons a day. Okay, now it's at least a gallon an hour. At least a gallon an hour, 2 gallons an hour, 10 gallons an hour, 20 gallons an hour, 30 gallons an hour, 40 gallons an hour, 50 gallons, 60 gallons an hour. Okay, if it's 60 gallons an hour, is it at least a gallon a minute? Yes. Now we get at least a gallon a minute, go from there. So I learned my lesson. But it was through failure that I learned my lesson. And I got better. That occurred again in Texas when I succeeded where another dowser had failed. Several wells had been put in on a property that a developer wanted to develop. Nice hillside, good views, but he couldn't get any water. So he found out about me, I came out. So there were 3 wells drilled on 3 successive lots. And I doused each one of those first. And I realized the issue that was going on. He had made the same mistake I did, thinking that the water was at a higher level, and it was way down there. It was just out of sight. So I figured he probably didn't even use that specificity to douse depth. He just found the water, drill here. And the water was in what they call the Trinity Formation. It was like 1,000 feet down. So they never found it. I found shallower water in the 200 to 300 foot level in other locations on the same lots. They went back, drilled, got the water on every single lot. So it was great feedback for me, and I realized that some dowsers out there are giving dowsing a bad rep because they're not thorough. Be clear, be clear, be centered, be innocent, be thorough, be specific. Any other questions? Yes.
So I'd like to know how Crystal douses auras.
You want a demo?
You can do a demo? Yeah.
So,
Start with that and then
I
move
started,
on.
yeah,
So I know what an aura is, and there's lots of definitions of auras and layers and things, so you want to find some layer that you can find, not the one that's way out there.
And why do we
because
want to douse an aura?
And it's health related, and that's where I came to it from.
So how would you define an aura?
Electromagnetic energy that the person gives off,
Okay,
high frequency energy. It's all of the above and part of the above.
okay.
It's,
Measurable and not measurable?
yeah, I can feel it with my hand, so,
So where the aura comes in closer to the body is often a weak area or an injured area?
yeah, if you have a medical problem, an injury or something, that usually shows up in the oral layer that's closer to the body. And different books explain it differently, this one's, so you would read a whole bunch of stuff on it. But you need to find a definition that you can work with. And you want to, I find it easiest to either the closest to the body or the next to the closest body layer. So I'm just calling them layers. I'm not asking for the etheric layer, the physical layer. I just want to know, because they all kind of mirror each other in some respect. So I use the dowsing rod, and whereas Steve's go out for a positive, mine go in. I also use them, okay, I'm away from him, I'm outside of that aura that I'm looking for, and I just kind of push it in until it starts to bounce off. So it's like something's here, and I'm going in until it hits it, and then it bounces off, okay? So it's not giving me a yes or a no, it's just saying, I'm here.
So how would you describe that energy field? Is it a positive, is it a negative?
So, neither one.
Well, what is it?
So, good question. And it depends. So if I'm dowsing the aura, okay, and I'm just looking for the general energy field, is this person, a healthy person? Are they, vibrant? Are they non-vibrant? I keep bouncing off this layer right about here. Okay, so the next thing I did is someone said, well, why don't you, I was having trouble controlling this thing, it just was going a little wacky. And I said, well, why don't you use your hand and use this as your sensor? So that's what I did. I just started, come in and watch my dowsing rod here, because it's going to give me some sort of an answer, and I would just come in and wait for the response in the dowsing rod, and that's my positive response.
So you're using both? So
I'm using both, and then I begin to notice that I could feel it. And I thought, oh, what's that little spot there? So, and then you have to go back to the clear, all the mnemonics, you gotta be, I'm not expecting anything there, and, what could it be?
Okay, so is this
Physical,
something,
mental.
is this something you could draw, or would you describe it as a color? Would you give it an area? How would you describe it?
It's kind of all of the above and none of the above, it just depends. It
Okay.
depends on what I pick up, okay?
And the person that you're measuring can control their aura as well, or affect it.
Yeah, so depending on the individual's attitude at the time and physical state, their aura may expand or
Or
contract.
reduce,
Mhm.
or hide completely.
Kirlian photography, back in the day, this is going back to the 70s, people were experimenting with high voltage photography, putting your finger on a plate and hooking that up to a Tesla coil, and it would produce what looks like an aura on film. But as the person's attitude and health would change, that film representation of the aura would also change. So it wasn't like you were actually photographing the aura, but there was something similar that was going on. Kirlian photography was showing something, a measure similar to the aura. But yeah,
So that's
Chris had a massage practice for years.
So I have my hands on people.
Yeah, and it would sometimes, she would visualize or feel something going on when she had her hands on them. So, you know, this dowsing faculty can be developed in a number of different directions. It starts out as a simple amplification of the subconscious muscle response. And then we build from there. I've done a little psychometry.
What is that?
Psychometry is where you pick up an object and you get impressions from that object. Psychics might use that as a way of adding information to a criminal case or something. We did a test when I was at a dowsing conference, and he handed out a number of different objects that were in envelopes, sealed envelopes. We were just supposed to hold the sealed envelope and give our impressions. Well, okay, I was holding this envelope, just trying to kind of blank my mind. I wasn't doing any 10 questions or anything, trying to narrow down what it was, just getting an impression. All I could sense was, ooh, I'm up high.
Right.
What's this? Up high, I'm up high. I feel blue all around me. What's going on? It was a feather. I was getting the impressions of the bird. But it was weird. I had never done that before.
What do you think that is? The feelings of the bird that are left in the feather?
I have no idea. I don't know how that works. But somehow there was an impression there. Maybe my intuition was picking up on that feather, but didn't know how to articulate that it was a feather. In fact, the instructor that did that little experiment, I said, I feel blue. I feel like I'm high. He says, no, you're wrong. It's a feather. You should have got feather. So that was an experiment that taught me a little bit about our intuition, that we get fragments and impressions. We don't necessarily get specific information. And this is how dowsing works. Dowsing is creating those layers of specificity on top of a very analog intuition. Our intuition is not digital. It doesn't come up with specific answers. It gives us feelings and directions and you know, maybe I want to do that. Maybe I want to move in this direction. This feels good. But we don't have anything specific. So I remember there was a quote from Spider-Man. My spider sense is tingling. Something is about to happen, but I don't know what. And we kind of are in that situation with dowsing, where we have this feeling, but we don't know how to articulate it. We can't put it into a box. This is how we put it into a box. Clear, centered, innocent, thorough, specific questioning. Narrow down that search until you have the answer that you're looking for. The intuition is floating all around out there, trying to, give you an answer. So you want to create the structure that answer can hold on to. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, now I have a follow-up question. Because you didn't write those words that you just said up there, but do you use those in life as a mantra?
Yes. Next question.
Yeah, I think they are written down on the piece of paper you set up
Yeah.
there, right? So they are written down if you want to. So I was just a general question, like, can you just give a bunch of examples of how, like, so how you use it, right, with your dowsing for water, and you maybe use it with your medical? Is there just, I mean, it's just open-ended, its uses, or are people using it for?
It's very open-ended. Silas here uses it for all kinds of stuff, and you can talk to him about Dowsing Charts.
And I have, this is a chart, you know, it's got alphabets on it, it's got all the numbers, percentages. Now, if you go down to the printing shop down there and ask for Cyber Size, my email, they've got all the charts on file there. And if you get them made, get them a little bit bigger, but it comes from a book called Letters to Susan.
Okay.
Letters to Robin, yeah. It's phenomenal because in dowsing, it's all in the question. If you have specific, exact questions, and so with all these numbers and all these percentages and everything, you can articulate your question just perfectly. And then you basically teach with your pendulum. Like I taught myself what yes and no is, and over this is I don't know, and just, it's incredible. And when I asked and said, practice 20 minutes twice a day, and he said in 2 years you'll be a master at it. But I've been doing it, and I've gone from a 2 to a 6 in about 3 months, as far as getting better and better at it.
Yeah, so he brings up a great point, that it is practice, and just like anything else, we get better with practice, but we'll have a limit. And that's just built in. I mean, some of us are really wired to do math. Yeah, we got a math head, right? And others don't. Others are language people, and they can do 6 languages, but they can't do math with beans, right? So we're all wired differently. We all have different capacities, and dowsing might be one of them. Dowsing, you might just become a natural. The old timers that, you know, walked around by wetting their hands and getting a peach twig and finding the water, when they had an audience, it's usually a bunch of kids, and they just hand the rod around to the kids and see which one could get a response. That became the next dowser for the next generation, because he was a natural at it. He had that built-in wiring to make it work right away. Hey, all of us know how to read, all of us can do math. We can't all do calculus, I can't, but we can all do basic math. And this is sort of the same thing. We can all do basic dowsing, we'll all get the dowsing response, and we can get the basic stuff. Some of us will learn to be better than others. You'll constantly prove up at each level, you know. Okay, I can douse where the water line is going to the house, I can douse the sprinkler lines, I guess I can douse water. I can find the electric lines because I've proved up and dug down and I find them. And now I'm going to douse for lost pets. Okay, that might work, but that's a big jump, you know. Okay, from water lines to missing pets. Maybe you're a natural at it, and you do it. You're right every time with missing pets, but there's a lot of things that go wrong with that. So you want to work up gradually. I think I spent maybe 3 years working up from the swing rod to a Y rod to my hands, where I could just douse with my thumbs. Very gradually, proving up every time with each different instrument, making sure that it was working and it wasn't, you know, just stick wagging. Now I can douse with my thumbs. Other people are, I mean, just so sensitive they can just feel it and just walk around and know that there's water here. Was there another question?
Yeah. What about long distance dowsing?
Yes.
Because we're all in a unified field.
Yeah, yeah. So there's, people have used the analogy that we have a holographic universe. And that sort of fits with how our information is gathered in dowsing. If the universe is made up like a hologram, then in everything there's a piece of everything else. And we are all connected, whether we like it or not. So if that's true, we should be able to dowse at a distance. And indeed, I can put a map down and imagine that I am looking down on the city of Ashland or the entire state of Oregon or whatever, and dowse for something on this map, using a straight edge going across the map, and then another direction, and I'll wait until I get a dowsing response. So I'm using a swing rod, I'm using a straight edge going across, and when that straight edge hits the object I'm looking for, I get a response, and go the other way, and again, it'll get a response, and I'll make a box, and it's in that box. So I've done that numerous times with water. And in fact, that's how I'll start. I'll start with a map, then go to the field, check it in the field, go back to the map, clean the map up, because, you know, it wasn't accurate. I had not seen the property, or maybe I had seen the property, but I hadn't dowsed it, went back, did the map. So that's all possible. Dowsing missing persons, dowsing missing pets, you know.
Yeah.
Did you dowse for gold?
Gold? Yeah, you can do precious metals. It helps to have some geology, helps to know what concentrations are, what you're looking for. If you're envisioning a chunk of pure gold, you're probably not going to find it. If your gold is, 20 ounces per ton, yeah, you can dowse that. Tell you a little, how much time we got? So, okay. So I did some dowsing for gold right here in Oregon. I was teaching out of Roseburg. I opened up the program for vision impaired in Roseburg. And in that year, we had lots of different schools that I had to find students at and teach. And I'd go over the Umpqua River, and I would notice coming back, sometimes there would be a dredge down along the piers, under the bridge, going over the Umpqua. Well, I asked somebody locally, what's going on down there? Why is there a dredge? He says, oh, those are miners. They're down there dredging the bottom, around the pilings. And they make enough, they find a little bit of gold. They make enough to pay for their equipment. It's kind of a hobby, and they're hoping they strike it, and get a big pile. So I thought, well, I bet I could dowse for where the concentrations of gold are, right along the Umpqua. So I did. I just got a map, and I used the straight edge method, and I got a location along the Umpqua River. And I drove out there, got out of the car, just okay. So I walked out, and I got right close to the edge of the river, and I got my response. Wrong. It's a big rock outcrop. I was looking for a sandbar. I need something I can sluice in a pan, Where's the gravel? Where's the sand? And okay, so I go back 50 yards. Let's try this again. Gotta be wrong. Yeah. Right back to the rock again. Big rock outcrop. Yeah, right. Maybe it's locked up in the rock. Wait a minute. There's moss in this rock. I bet the river level wasn't always at this level. I bet it was in flood stage once and covered this rock. And in flood stage, it would carry a lot of heavy material. I wonder if it's in the moss. So I scooped, actually, I didn't do it there. I scooped up a bunch of the moss and I brought it home. And I got a bucket and I squeezed out, you know, a little handful of moss. And there was gold in the bottom. Just a little couple of flecks, but every single handful had a few flecks of gold coming out of it. Damn! I thought it was hot stuff, right? Well, I had proved up that I could do it, okay? And now I collected a little bit, I had a little test tube, and there was probably 1/8 of an inch in the bottom of the test tube that I had gold flakes. I was really proud of myself. So I was bragging to this old timer that had done some mining in Oregon back in the day, and he said, "Well, what did you do with the moss?" Well, I said, "I just chucked it out." He says, "You threw away half the gold. You're supposed to burn that stuff and sift the ashes." So I probably did. I probably threw away half of the gold flakes because it would get caught in the moss. Even after you've squeezed it out and what I thought I had thoroughly squeezed, and there was something still stuck in there. But I had proved up. So yes, you can do it. So the next step was, okay, where's the mother lode? Because this is how prospectors worked in Oregon. They would go up the stream and kept sluicing out and finding little flecks of gold until it stopped. Oh, I've gone beyond where it's coming in on a tributary. And they go back to the tributary and then go up that tributary until it would stop again. And then they would go up the next tributary until they found the mother lode. Oh yeah, I can do this. So I dowsed where that mother lode was. And it took me up the Umpqua. I did this on a map first. And the canyon narrowed. And it was like 60 degrees, right? There's no freaking way I was going halfway up that cliff to try and find that concentration. That's probably where it was coming from. It was washing down into the Umpqua and, you know, ended up in the river. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
So when you said you did it with a map, does that mean you dowsed a map?
Yeah.
Oh, how cool.
So yeah, by using a map, you can just cover a lot more territory a lot faster.
Mm-hmm.
Questions?
So it amazes me that dowsing isn't more known about and utilized. It just seems like it is kind of a lost art in this contemporary time of ours. And is there anything you can speak into about that? Because it seems very...
It's almost, it varies with the culture. In Europe and in Russia, they're much more practical about it.
Yeah.
They use what works. And if that works better than something else, then that's what we use.
Yeah.
In this country,
A lot of people do it.
yeah, and South America. In this country, we sort of, if we can't prove it scientifically and nail it down so that it works every freaking time,
So-
we're not interested.
Yeah. I think
Yeah.
it's treated like witchcraft, right?
Again?
A lot of more conservative religious people kind of think it's more witchcraft or something.
Yeah, or it's this rural thing that, you know, they do out in the sticks and, you know, maybe it works for them, but it doesn't work in the city. There's lots, I mean, there's all kinds of possibilities in the city for using it, not just underground water.
So it strikes me that it has to do with the categorizing or conceptualizing of human potentiality. In other words, how we define this as, for example, extrasensory perception, or, you know, and therefore, as a consequence, good or bad, or whether it's an innate quality that we have that we can develop or not.
Well, I think most people would agree that extrasensory perception is real, and that
Right, but some people are afraid of it.
and that it's not consistent. It's neither consistent across people or across time. individually. So I may vary from day to day. Okay, I have biorhythms and whatever, and some of that gets in the way. So, yeah, dowsing is very similar. We have a biophysical response that is pretty consistent. Every time we walk over a water vein, we get a response. But that's going to vary in sensitivity. Each individual is a little bit different. Some of us are really wired for that, and some of us aren't. When I work with new students, almost invariably they can get a response.
Great to see you.
But it varies in sensitivity. And then there's the intuitive side. Oh, I don't need to be right on that vein of water. I can douse it from here. I'll douse from the edge of the property to where the best place to drill a well is, and how much water I can get. That's intuitive, and that's very inconsistent. And that's what our culture avoids, like the plague. They see that inconsistency and they go, this isn't real. I can't prove it every time, and it's hocus pocus. It only works some of the time. I can't depend on it.
Well, the better explanation is it has to do with a lot of factors.
Are you teaching?
Yes. So I haven't taught in a long time,
Okay.
but yes, please take each of the handouts.
Okay.
That card is really, I don't have a dowsing card that's current anymore, but yeah, those have my address on it.
What is this?
So a lot of people here, some people here are using it as a pendulum, and again, it's a subconscious muscle response, and it's going to start a movement. I'm asking for a positive response. Give me a positive response. Now a negative response. Give me a negative response. Now a positive response. So that takes a little more practice to develop it. I find a pendulum is really nice on a map. I can start at the edge of the map and start this spinning and ask it to take me out to the place where they can find the best well and just follow the pendulum. I can feel it drag me out and just. So
Are you consciously channeling your energy to do that? Or is it all unconscious?
no.
Stay innocent.
Vern Cameron developed this little device called the Cameron aura meter, and
That is cool.
it's just it's a bobber, and it's also a swing rod.
Yeah,
So
they're hard to make.
coming in on this individual, I'm looking for her inner aura, looking for the inner aura, and it won't. I can try it. It won't go in.
That's weird.
It'll bounce off. It won't go
going away.
in, right? So it's me. I'm doing it, but it's totally subconscious.
And what do you do?
It looks like it's bouncing off where her inner aura is.
And it's bouncing off her.
Oh.
So like this up here, just it won't penetrate the aura. So it's a very neat device.
Wow.
What
Where
does that
do you
mean?
get that?
Does it work?
Is it called
So
a
again,
bobber?
Amazon?
The Cameron aura meter. You might be able to find it on Amazon. I don't know.
Made in China.
Yeah.
Have you ever done for mold in the house to
Aura
find where
meter?
it's coming from?
Cameron was
I
the
have
name of the
not.
guy. Vern Cameron.
She asked if I've ever doused for mold in the house and where it's coming from.
It is
That
shape.
should
That
be
would be a good
easy.
business.
Should be an easy douse.
Is it
Mold needs moisture, and
You know,
yeah, you're probably going to find that
just
pretty quickly.
Google it and see
So what
if
did you sell
if they're
today?
still making them.
Again,
What did you sell today? They have a dowsing rods or?
oh, what am I selling?
Yeah.
Uh,
What is for sale?
These little flexible wire rods,
And how much they have?
$5.
Okay.
So yeah.
Do you have a change?
I would love to get everyone to just experience walking over a water flow. I marked it here in flagging tape, this orange flagging tape, and I would start by holding the rod up and locking my arms so the elbows are locked, and then asking the question, show me natural underground flowing water. Natural underground flowing water now. Natural underground flowing water now. And it will come back. So it would be fun. Just give it a shot, especially if you have not tried dowsing before.
Could be natural, or it could be, if you say a water pipe, you could do the same thing.
You could do the same thing with a
Whatever
water
you
pipe. This happens to be a natural flow of water. It's not much. There's only like half a gallon a minute flowing here. There's not much water. But yeah, it would be, you can come in from either side looking for underground water flowing now. Underground water flowing now. And what I would suggest is internalizing the question. That's just a little device. By repeating it to yourself over and over, it pushes the other thoughts out. So it centers your concentration. It relaxes the mind. Anytime we repeat something over and over, we're sort of relaxing the mind, almost like hypnosis. And then we just walk over the zone.
I say things just to myself, thinking it works. You
Yeah.
don't have to say it out loud.
You don't have to say it out loud. You could just start by saying it out loud and then just internalize the question and just repeat it to yourself.
And when you do that, I'm realizing that your thoughts are really real. You don't want to think negative thoughts,
That's right.
because they're like, wow, you're affecting the world with your thoughts.
Yeah. So the other reason for keeping that questioning going is to push other thoughts out. When we get a willy-nilly thought, I mean, I've been dowsing out there looking for water, and suddenly I get this weird reaction. But I realize, oh, my mind's been wandering. I'm thinking about what I'm doing tomorrow. Let's get back on the question, you know. So by centering yourself on that question, internalizing it, you're just limiting the outside distractions, keeping yourself focused.
And how best do you go into the alpha state? Because supposedly that's way more effective. How do you best, like, just, I find often I can do it, like, just all of a sudden asking, a question
Yeah.
that seems to be accurate. It's like, supposedly you're way more accurate, like, I forget how much percentage when you get in an alpha state, right?
When I get what?
Alpha
In an alpha
state.
state, like,
Yeah.
Can you
You're in like
repeat
a
the question?
meditative state.
So when you're in an alpha state, yes, you're probably more accurate. I've done some studies. Actually, it was for a labyrinth. We built a labyrinth at this friend's house, and I wanted to see what the results were after people walked the labyrinth. But I wanted some scientific evidence. So I borrowed an electroencephalogram, an encephalograph, a device that would record theta, delta, alpha, and beta all at once on both hemispheres, independently. And then I had people walk the labyrinth and then come back, and we'd hook them up. And I'd also have people walk a similar pattern, but it wasn't in the labyrinth. I just had them walk randomly, but the same distance, same amount of time, and then do the same thing. Totally different electroencephalograms. The people that were outside the labyrinth had very even responses in pretty much the entire thing. The folks that had been in the labyrinth, there was a definite shift to the right brain and a definite increase in the alpha. And I wrote that up. I got that published.
but just doing the labyrinth, doing it, walking it, put your enough out, or can't you go in it much faster? Like, just maybe counting down from 3, 2, 1, supposedly with holding your breath, kind of.
Yeah. I mean, there's plenty of ways to do that.
Just staying focused is what he's saying. You gotta focus on what you're doing.
Yeah. You have to focus, and It's a gentle focus. It isn't forced. So, like in meditation, the more we try to force the meditation, the less we get there. We have to relax into the meditation. We can stay relaxed in that focus. And that's sort of the way we need to do it in dowsing. I've taught different age groups. The teenagers tend to be very self-conscious. Who's watching me? Do I want to do this? They're going to laugh at me, I know. And then the little kids, the 7 to 11-year-olds, they don't care. They just, well, let me try this. I've never done this. They don't know they can't do it. And they all do it. They just take off. The teenagers, maybe some of them do it, and some of them are very reluctant to even try it. It depends on maybe their family background and how influenced they are by their peers. But the kids from about 8 years old and up to about 11, before they start to get jaded, they can do it really well. And I think it's that childlike innocence. They don't have any preconceptions. They don't know they can't do it. Uri Geller used to bend spoons, right? He just kind of wiggle it in his hand and the spoon would flop over and melt. People would watch him do it at home on TV. They'd pick up a spoon and they'd do it. It's like we have to relax into it, and we have to know that somebody else has done it.
Well, we have to believe. That they say that word "believe."
Yeah,
That's a really
to some
important
extent.
one.
There's something I call the cosmic yes. It's when you look in the mirror and say, yes, I can do this. You have to believe in yourself, and you have to know that there's really no limits. You have to know that you have to approach it carefully and prove up every time. But how far can you go? That's up to you. That's up to us to just keep experimenting. We'll find our limit. There will be a limit out there. I kind of know where mine is now. But there are dowsers that are way better than I am. I've taught people that are better than me because right away I realized, whoa, they're getting a reaction. It wasn't just this little, I think I'm getting a reaction. No, it just, it was out of their hands. So everybody has their own abilities. You don't know what yours are until you try. So let's try. So that finishes our dowsing for the evening. You can get back in touch with me. We'll try to do a half-day seminar maybe and continue this dowsing experience.